Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Sarah. And last year we started our business by Design Homes, which includes design and construction, midterm rentals, and staging.
And on this podcast, we will be talking to other business owners about how they are creating unique and impactful businesses while building and managing their own lives and families.
Along the way, we'll share our journey as business owners and a busy family of 6.
We hope that you join us to learn and grow and discover new pathways to building life. Welcome to the David and Sarah podcast. Michael and Jenny Greslin, welcome to the David and Sarah podcast. We are so grateful that you guys joined us here today. Great to have you. Great to get a chance to interact and talk a little bit about you. Sarah and I know you as parents of kids who we share a school with, in spite of being in Texas and South Dakota. But kids know each other and in the same world from that standpoint, as well as the owners and managers of Timberline Builders. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here today, you guys. Well, my name is Michael.
And I'm Jenny.
And we live in Spearfish, South Dakota. So kind of the center of the nation when you consider Alaska to Florida, Hawaii.
You're in the middle.
We're in the middle. We're in the Great Plains, right in the midst of it. But we've got 4 boys, ages 10 through 10 through 5. And so tight range of 4 boys and a lot of horsepower in the group. And so we're home as you guys we know as well. So yeah, that's what we do. We like you said, we own and operate a residential construction firm here in Spearfish.
Okay, and so tell us a little bit about that. What's the name of the company and kind of what is your focus as an organization?
Sure. Well, the name is Timberline Builders, and our focus, our model project is high-end residential work. So we do some commercial work as well, construction work as well, but we're general contractors. So we handle everything from site development to infrastructure upgrades to managing the design process to construction of the complete structure to finished out to turnkey, plug in your coffee maker, and welcome home.
Nice.
Soup to nuts, all of it. And so how did you end up in this business? How did you end up owning a luxury residential construction business?
Well, it's been a journey, as you can imagine.
I imagine so.
As all business owners say, everyone who's been an owner of a business for more than a year says, I was a bit naive, and so it has been a journey. But this business was actually started by my dad, and this was before I was even came to put feet on this earth by a few years. But his story was, he was a draftsman for a design firm in Rapid City, South Dakota. So it's a town about 50 miles away from us. And my understanding, I should probably get a little more clarity on exactly how the sequence worked, but my understanding was he just got really tired of being cooped up in a basement office, never seeing the sunshine all day, and thought he would like to be on the opposite side of the construction drawings, to be the one building it. Now, when I think about this, I'm not certain that he actually had any construction experience. That never came up, and if he did, I don't know where he would have got it, because he did a stint in the Army, and then he worked up, I know, in the woods logging for a while before he went to school to become a draftsman. So I don't know where he got the audacious idea to just go out into construction. But
if I can draw the pictures, I'm sure I can build it, I guess.
I think it's as easy as that, right? I do remember that he had I believe it was a neighbor up the street who wanted to remodel their kitchen, and this was going to be his first job. So we're talking 1 employee, 1 pickup, 1 ladder that goes in the back of it, and maybe a tool bag, and 0 experience. And so he had this project lined up. I remember him telling me the story, and so it's going to work out sequentially very well. He put his notice in at work, went through his last day at work, and the job canceled. And so his was no job at all. So that didn't help him get any experience on that first job.
Oh no.
From there, he just started to do small projects, little remodel jobs. I think just a friends and family deal to start out with. And eventually it grew to where he had to employ some people in the summertime. And back then, in those days, I remember the business being like a square wheel where he gains momentum in the summertime. And up in the Midwest up here, when it gets wintertime, it's getting to be a little more mild lately. But in the days that I grew up in, it would just, winter would bear down in October and it would leave in April. And the construction business, by and large, would just shut down. There wasn't the technology back then to continue to pour concrete in the wintertime like we do today. And it was different then. And so his business would just have this momentum in the summertime, staff up with employees, and then fall would come, early winter, and it would just grind to a stop. And then all along, he would spend actually designing projects that he was bidding. So he would do the design work and the construction work too. And our company had a design component to it for a long time because that was, well, and then then he contracted a few projects in the wintertime, spring, employed brand new people again, and try to just go out and complete these construction projects with new people and just no momentum. Every year, I remember it was that way.
Wow.
He would go through his year until fall again, and this big square block would just come to a stop.
Oh,
I feel that. I feel the pain of that cycle.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't know how he made it through. I would think that basement office would look pretty good.
Yeah. Nice, steady.
Yeah. And so he did that for the first 10 years. And I remember around that year 10 mark that he was in business, him just getting really frustrated with the employee situation. And for everybody listening to this, a lot of business owners, you know that employees are a very necessary part of almost every business, not all, but they have a tendency to be a very difficult part, with recruiting and securing the right ones, to keeping them to it's the human business. Like all that thing that all businesses share is that human component to it. And that human component can be the most challenging ones.
Right.
About 10 years in, I remember, this is when my memory starts to kick in pretty well, that he just had enough. And he just decided just to shut it down for a year and try to pursue something else. So he closed the construction business, kept the tax ID registrations and the business licenses all intact for about a year, and went and did some work for somebody else, did something else, totally non-related to construction. And then I remember a friend of theirs from church conned him into building a house for them. And that's when the business started back up again. And that's been continuously running ever since. This year is the 51st year that this has been in operation.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. So he went from no experience to 10 years of remodeling to I'm going to build a house.
Yeah.
On a plot of land. Let's just go from the ground up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So what was? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, as we talk about it now, I guess I'm impressed with his courage and his ability to say yes to things he probably shouldn't have said yes to.
Right, yeah. We might not have advised him to do those if we were having that conversation. Like, wow, that's a lot of learning to do real quick.
Yeah.
But it also feels like, how many businesses have we talked to where business owners start a business, they don't know everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, until you actually put your hand to it and start to do it and start to do the work, it rarely is a nice linear, let me go learn this and let me go learn this and let me go learn this. And now I'm ready to run this business. Like, it feels like it rarely works that way. It's always you take some level of action, and that action forces you to learn, forces you to respond. And through that process, you get to where you suddenly become a competent business owner, a competent manager, a competent general contractor who can build houses and that kind of thing.
Kind of like being a parent, as you talk about it. It's a lot the same process. You go into this not knowing a thing, scared to death.
You don't know.
Yeah, it's a thing. When it doesn't work out, and before long, it's got that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely a faith component there.
But it's that is a true analogy. We also have 4 kids. Ours are slightly more spread out because our youngest is 5, like yours, but our oldest is 14.
Yeah.
And we're girl, boy, boy, girl. But yeah, I thank God that the oldest has turned out as normal and reasonable as she has, because we sure didn't know anything.
We didn't know anything. We thought we knew a lot,
We
but
thought we knew a lot, but I cringe a little bit when I think back to the first few years of parenting.
but we're good now.
Okay.
We're good now.
Okay, so good.
No, yeah.
So how did you become involved? So your dad's running it. Like, was this one of those, you like the business, you just knew kind of coming out of high school, you're just going to join up with your dad and be a part of that business? Or was it a winding road? Like, how did the connection happen?
Yeah, it was not at all like that.
It wasn't the first one.
So I grew up doing this in the summer times. I remember even 10, 11 years old, I would go to the job sites in the summertime off of school and hang out with him and the guys all day. And I remember one of my very first jobs was sitting. He did a remodel of a church, and part of that remodel was they pulled the existing brick, like all these old churches had, off, and they built onto it. Well, they wanted to utilize those existing bricks in the new construction. So I remember, and I must have been 11 years old, sitting at pallets sitting at a brick pile with these empty pallets there. And my job was a mortar hammer, breaking the mortar.
Oh, wow.
Stack those bricks up. But the thing is, I got to observe the process happen and the interaction with the guys. And I got to go sit with them at lunchtime and at coffee breaks. I mean, in those days, the guys would come with their lunchbox and they'd have a thermos of coffee in it. I mean, they were old carpenters. It wasn't these young, people who would just use construction as a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
Really old, experienced guys. And I remember really loving that, and the stories and just the atmosphere of it. And that's what I grew up. So I grew up summers working for him. And I was all fine and good until I graduated high school and realized that there was a world out there that I'd never seen. And that I was done with swinging hammers. I was done with construction and dirt, and just wanted nothing else, nothing to do with that again. So those years, I went to college actually for agriculture, and I took a 5-year and just went the opposite direction completely of that. And in the back of my mind, while I did that, I've got a brother and a sister, and then myself, and those two weren't interested in family business at all. And in that 5-year time that I went and pursued something that I was actually interested in versus something that I kind of just felt like I had to help out because I lived at home.
Right.
In the back of my mind, it was just a question of, well, from my dad's perspective, what's it going to be like, a business that he started that is not going to continue? It just, for some reason, I don't know if it was a romantic position in me or dramatic. I just thought how nice, like a legacy business would be. And
right.
Like I would follow, or somebody would take it on. The thought of it just dying, it bothered me a bit. It didn't bother me enough to change my direction, but I thought
it was in the back of your mind.
It was there.
In a priority way back there. But I was on the opposite side of South Dakota, and actually I was working in the feedlot. We were finishing feeder cattle, so we would take cattle from 800 pounds and feed them to 1,200 pounds till they were finished and ready for their next stage of not their life, but their process.
The next part of their purpose.
Yes.
So I was working there and enjoying that. And one day I went into the guy I worked for. We had a vet room, which is a warm room that we had our veterinary supplies in the back of his garage. And when I opened his garage up, his pickup was inside of it, and he had a bunch of plywood, and we call it OSB plywood. It's used in a lot of projects. It's plywood made of chips. It has a very distinct smell to it. And when I opened the door, I smelled that plywood, and it was just like, it was like my eyes just became open to, I wonder if I'm missing an opportunity. My dad's back home. He's doing his thing. I'm doing my thing. I'm not really getting anywhere, and I can't see I probably would get anywhere, like as far as building a career other than being an employee, which doing something that I really enjoy doing. But he placed that was a seed in me that Dad placed early on that there was a glamorous position of being self-employed. There was a lot of pride mixed in with his decision, and I even remember some comments that he would make. I guess I would consider them somewhat derogatory to people who had a whole career working for somebody else, when you should just go do something for yourself. And so I smelled that plywood and I thought about maybe I missed an opportunity. And it just started the wheels turning. Well, maybe I should talk to him about moving back. It had been about 5 years at this point. So I did, and I just called and said, "Hey, Dad, I was just kind of considering maybe moving back. I wondered if I could just come." And of course, he just said, "Yeah, absolutely, come back. We'd love to have you." And
Of course.
Still pretty small at that time, but they had made some momentum, so it wasn't the square wheel concept of business management. And so I moved back home. That would have been, I was 23 at the time that I went to work for him full time. This is the current. And I went through that period of time where this is the last thing I want to do. Maybe it's not so bad, and maybe there's an opportunity that I do something myself.
So you said 23, 24, call your dad, you're gonna head back home and join his business. When does Jenny come into the picture? Am I still too early for that? Am I cutting ahead? Like, when?
Way too early for that yet.
Oh, I'm way too early.
Yeah. The term late bloomers could probably apply to our situation somewhat.
Okay. So I'll hold that question. So you go back, you engage with now you said you went as a carpenter. Now when you say carpenter, does that like all things carpenter? Is it trim? Is it frame carpentry? Like, or was it just that you could do anything? Cabinets?
Yeah, great question. No, in those days we did everything. So we did a lot of concrete work, started all the framing, we do all the siding, install windows. We never really got involved much with drywall, and of course not the specialty trades of electrical, plumbing, heating systems. We always subcontract those out, and floorings we would. But we would trim everything out, and so I got a pretty wide education in the construction process.
Yeah.
That's fun. So you went back, and so then what happened next? Did you get there and you were like, yes, I was right? Like, this is something that I really like? You know, the smell of OSB and the romanticness that it brought to you and the desire, it turns out, was right?
Yeah. Oh, I wish it was that. It was that nice. What happened really was the romance of being back in the construction business faded pretty quick, just because I was pretty arrogant then. I thought I was coming into this family business, and all I could really see was the dinosaur that my dad was. You know, not so much in. No, it was in all areas. It was in the way he built. It was in the way he managed his employees, the way he managed his finances. He just seemed to be so archaic to me. And I mean, this is coming from a kid who decided he wanted to do something else. Now changed his mind and came back and was all of a sudden a professional in all things business. I know it. I cringe when I think about who I was then. But the kind of the fun of engaging in the construction project or process or business waned and left way to just the pride of being a business owner and being better. And so I just developed myself as a carpenter, but quickly, just as it would be if your son came in and was ambitious, I got put in charge of projects as a foreman and in charge of people, and then in charge of estimating, or not in charge of, but tasked with some estimating jobs. And I really thought I had a career by the tail. You know, I would look at other people's construction projects, and I would learn quickly what they're doing better than us, and I would apply it, and then consider themselves better than almost everybody else. It was a time. You hear people talk about, oh, the glory days of being in your 20s, and I would never go back. Absolutely. never go back to living with who I was then. It's one of those things you look back in the rearview mirror and you just thank God that he is shaped and trained us and tutored us
Mm-hmm.
over the years. Because I was really prideful back then. And that's, again, like I said earlier, the pride that my parents both would exhibit towards being self-employed, that landed deep inside of my heart, scripted me, and it was just waiting for a time to come out. Just gave me a platform, I guess, to kind of be that one. I'm better than a lot of people out there, a lot of my friends, and
Identity.
yeah, my identity was completely in being. I wasn't a business owner at that time, but I was a up and comer, I guess, in
Right.
a podunk town in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. But I didn't know that. I thought I was all that. But so yeah, it was kind of a tough time in my life, and I really through the next couple of years, I worked hard for my dad, but at the same time, we butted heads a lot because he had his way of doing things that were proven to him, and they were the way he run his business. And all I could see was how dysfunctional my dad was. I just didn't have an appreciation for him. And it's like, yeah, definitely not proud of who I was then. But there's a lot of several years and a lot of conversations that just really battling him for no reason, absolutely no reason than selfish pride. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting is you're describing it as like I wouldn't go back there, but it's not because you weren't being from an external viewpoint successful. At least that's the way it sounds to me. Like you were learning new construction techniques, taking, observing from other organizations, making your team better, running projects, learning a lot in the process, I assume. So like the external evidence, if someone would have just looked in, might have said, oh, this is what this is supposed to look at. Look, the son has come, he's growing, he's influencing the business, it's going well. But the way you characterize it is, well, it was not a pleasant time. And it seems like it's more because of what was going on inside versus the external evidence of success.
Yeah, and it's more on this side of life, looking back at it. At the time, I thought, yeah, I'm on a track. I'm on a track of success here, and my parents were believers growing up, and so they raised me to fear the Lord, and they raised me to do the right things. But at the time, being a Christian-owned business, what they would classify themselves as, and myself growing up being a believer too, I would classify myself as that, thinking that was probably the most honorable thing place that I could be, not realizing that really what that meant is just convincing God to bless my pursuits. God, this is what I'm going to do. Make it work. With no consideration of what God wanted to do at all. I mean, that was never that. But that in those days, that was like it's kind of like being a conservative Republican and being a Christian. You know what I mean? That just kind of comes along with the territory of the faith that I grew up in. And so we were a Christian-owned business. I was a believer. I was filled full of self-interest and pride, but I didn't know it at the time. And it wasn't until years later where God began to dismantle that thing, and that entered the wandering years a little bit again inside of me. But yeah, in those days, we kept getting a little bit bigger projects and of course, year-round work at that time. But the business at that time was 20 years old. It should have learned some things and what works and what doesn't. And it did. The problem was you bring a new blood in there who doesn't want to fall in line with the system, who thinks he's got to pay. And that did create some turmoil.
Yeah.
And we still, at that point in time, still primarily residential new build type of work?
Yep. There was some commercial work that we did back then as well. Built a couple churches, built some truck repair shop. We did some bigger projects at the time, but primarily it was still residential work. And we would still design almost everything that we would build. So we would never be a firm that were handed a set of plans in amongst 5 other general contractors to bid on a project. It was always that the client was built first. It would go through the design process and build, and which was a decent model, at the time for it, but it was still primarily residential work.
Okay. So what was the next pivot point then? So you're there, you're growing, you think you know better, all of that. What was the next pivot point in the journey?
So that period of time lasted for probably 7 or 8 years, and my dad started to get older, and he started to get fatigued from being a small business owner. And so he began to talk about retiring and talk about getting out of it, talk about selling it to me at the time. And we had probably were around 10 or 12 employees. And so I thought that sounded great. And so we started the process, had the business appraised by a business appraisal firm, and just started going through the process on that. And what came out of that was the most bizarre thing I'd ever experienced at the time. But my dad, who had started this thing, whose identity was completely wrapped up in it, but who was burdened by the level of responsibility that he carries every day, and the liability, and the struggles and the strains that all of us have in business. He wanted to get out, but we started the process of him exiting, and man, that hit his identity. And wow, some crazy attitudes and some crazy decisions and choices came out of that. And I was so confused at the time, going, well, you want out of this, but the moment we get close, you just sabotage it by firing a key person. I mean, he did that like a week before I was going to sign the papers on this, or by canceling jobs or getting irritated at clients, or just, and he would go back and forth of, I just want out of here one day, and the next day it'd be, everybody's pushing me out. You know, it was crazy to me. I didn't understand it. And now, as I've talked to more people who've been in situations similar to me, it's very typical for a business owner whose identity is so strongly rooted. The thought of that identity being pulled, they're lost inside. And so that comes out with some pretty crazy behavior. Well, and I saw that front and center. And so I remember when he fired this key person a week before I was supposed to sign these papers. This wasn't gifting. This was a purchase of a business. I said, you know what, Dad, I am done with your games. I'm going to work for you. I'll continue to manage this for you. But the only way I'll consider buying this is if you put it on the market, and I'll put a bid on it with everybody else. I'm just done with these games.
Wow.
So our relationship again went like this. Not this time, it was from his side, not necessarily mine. But it made a lot of turmoil in my life then too, a lot of stress, and dynamics getting weird. But still, we've got these clients and we've got projects that are in process, and you can't just leave him. He doesn't want to be there anymore. So he ended up leaving then day-to-day operations of the business, and I took over general management of all of it at the time. And so I moved myself out of the field into the office 90% of the time. And I really had to just throw myself and get good at estimating and project management and HR skills and all those things that before somebody else had done.
Yeah.
And how did that transition feel? So aside from the father-son dynamics, I think anytime someone moves out of the field, out of the hands-on, and into, let me figure out what it takes to just manage this thing, like what did that transition look like for you? Was it easy, enjoyable, frustrating? What was it like?
Well, it's kind of going back to earlier in our conversation, how confident you are at something and what you actually know about it are not the same bell curve.
Yeah.
That was pretty high. Like, finally, I can just steer this, and I can run this. The dinosaur is in here. We can actually make this a progressive company, because I was so naive. I had no idea the things that were beyond what I did in the past, like my day-to-day operations, and what I did for a job, I thought like encompassed all of what it took to run a business, and not a clue of what has to go on behind the scenes.
Wow.
So right away, I entered it and thought this was my chance. And I remember at the time asking God, okay, God, there's a change coming in this company. What would you, if you could just say whatever it is that you want done here, what would that be? I start. And he just said one thing to me, and he said, build the team. So I just went, okay, I can build the team because this is Mr. Ambition. I can do that. We're going to get white pickups out there with our name on it everywhere. We're going to staff up. We're going to start bidding more complex projects. Part of that is you got to go through so on commercial construction, when you bid those, typically you're required to be bonded. And bonded is basically, it's not an insurance policy, but for this conversation, you can kind of think of it as one assuring the owner that the project will be completed. And if you default on it, they can come clean on a bond and finish it well.
Right.
You start at a bonding level and you got to up your limits every single year until it gets significant enough you can start bidding on bigger projects. And for me, build a team meant bigger. That's the only way I interpreted that, is bigger. Build as in quantity. And it probably didn't help. I read a book in that phase of my life. It was a bestseller book, and he talked about the aspect of employees and of talent, of fill the bus and then figure out where the bus is going to go to. And that's what I was going to do. I was going to fill the bus and hire people. And again, this self-ambition just had an opportunity. It's really what it had. So
but it started in such a good place. Like it started with, God, what do you want? Like that sounded.
That was great. I know.
God put good seeds in the soil that was not that awesome. Is what he did. Yeah. It started a period of my life of a very quick wane from, oh man, I mean, the sky's the limit. Let's just go. I got a green light. I'm going to build a team. We're going to get bigger. We're going to get bigger. And my eyes were on the large construction firms out here,
right,
our region, just saying, hey, that's where we're headed. And I don't think I had a single success in any of the team building that I had tried. Oh man, the employee thing, I was just like such a struggle. And we'd hire people and I think, well, okay, I'll just hire anybody and I'll just develop them. You know, not everybody wants to be developed. They just I found out the hard way. They just don't, you know, and people are needy, and it just became so frustrating, but I had to build the team. And so it's just like people started to be just a tool, you know, to me. It was, they were only here. And I hate to say this now, but the term employees are a necessary evil was just part of my thinking system. I just hated that was a real belief in me, but it was. And just that this is something I need, but the human component is the hardest to deal with of any of my inputs of business. And then I would work on my bonding limits and a little bit bigger projects and a little bit bigger projects. And my guys hated them. They hated this kind of work that I was forcing them to do. You get into commercial work and I loved it because of the layers of communication and architects and engineers and different inspectors and testing and all these submittals and all this. So I loved it because I like big processes like that. It made me feel like a big shot at the time. But my guys just hated it. They hated this work. It was just so different from what they were doing. And I was really trying hard to turn something that was not ready to turn. But what happened was I just heard something from God and I just ran with it. I didn't stop for a moment and say, okay, build the team. What does that mean? What do you mean?
What do you mean?
What does team mean? What means a bigger company? Well,
yeah, that's right. So those years started out so ambitious, but ended up in such frustration to where you know what? Forget the whole build the team, everything. God, it's too hard. I'm not going to do it. We're just going to keep doing our work, doing our job, satisfying our clients. And that's it. And I really abandoned what he had said. I abandoned my misunderstanding to what he had said.
Right. Yeah.
So that's who I was. And then enters Jenny onto this.
Had to happen. Hey. I knew that would have to happen at some point in time in the story.
Yeah, it's a really a cool story that we could share for another day, but just a snippet. We met on a complete blind date, set up by acquaintances that we had known. I walked into a coffee shop, not even knowing who I was looking for. And there's a girl at the door, said, "Hi, I'm Jenny," stuck her hand out. And that's that. Yeah, I wasn't looking for a wife, that's for sure. But I know who I was going to come into contact with. And that changed in a hurry. Yeah. So we met and still managing the business full time, not buying it. Dad is going to still own it. Brought her into the world of me, and again, I was just really wrapped up in career, really wrapped up in identity of being a small business owner in construction, a growing construction company, and that's the world that Jenny got to know me in.
At the very beginning.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Right.
Yeah. And that was in 2010 that we met. And so we continued to develop our relationship together, and we got married in 2012. And also
a couple years.
Yep.
So you went from not looking for a wife to married in a couple of years. That's not too bad.
Yeah, rapid change. And also in 2012, my dad had come around. He had gone through a process of 4 years to just reckoning with the identity change inside of him. And he never really talked through that, what exactly happened, but there was a clear difference in him. He would come around the office and he would pop into some of our job sites, and you'd start to notice he'd be really proud of us, of what we're doing. And he would say, wow, I never did projects like this. I heard him say that a few times. And he approached us again after we got married in June. And it was sometime that fall that he approached us and said, I'm really ready to sell it. Would you guys be interested in buying? Now, he hadn't been involved in day-to-day operations in 4 years at this point.
Right.
And I was doing my best to run a successful business for him. And we said, yeah, we would. So let's talk. And this time he came and he just had the door wide open for us.
Wow.
Whatever he could do to make this work for us. And he sold it with zero blue sky. It was just assets. Now, this was a business at the time, was probably 30 something years old, with a history and with a client base and with a reputation. And he said, if you'll just buy my assets from me. And he even set it up on a contract for deed. We had to set up on a 5-year contract for deed for assets. And he just did everything he could do to make this work. It was amazing.
And when you say, for people just to understand, when you say no blue sky, you mean there was no growth projections that were put into the pricing. It was just literally, this is the assets we have. This is the revenue that we make today. We're going to value purely based on that.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. He just really had the door open for us. There had been a massive work done in his heart to get him to that place. And he saw, that I was different too. I mean, I had a team member in my life with Jenny that well, in this and in many, just about every way, just makes me such a better person. So he saw that too. I mean, he was selling it to somebody different as well. And I'm sure that played in that. So we signed, so we got married in June of that year. We signed the papers to purchase the business in December of that year. He was completely out and it was all ours at that point. And in those years, God really started to do a work on my identity and in who I am. And that's just one thing that I found as being a business owner now, involved with it and owning it for this long, is it's really boils down to just the personal transformation that God wants in me. He, at the end of the day, he doesn't need another construction company in Spearfish, South Dakota. There's plenty of good. It doesn't need us to build structures, although we do a good job. But there's plenty other ones who do as well. And so in those years of my life, after we got married, we bought the business, it really started to dawn on me. It's like, why does he have us doing this? I had dealt with a lot of pride at that point, or he had dealt with that in me. And so that was changing. And I was slower to make decisions. And my confidence level finally caught up with my experience level. And now it's like, well, God, I really don't know anything about how to run this thing, or how do I satisfy clients, and how do I discern what's going to be a good one or a bad one before entering in a contract with them, or how do I deal with these employees? And just realizing that the longer I do this, the less I really know what I'm doing. But at the time, Jenny was here to help me process through that. And again, the timing of God is absolutely everything. He
Yeah.
planted seeds in me that, God's timing is always right. But he put a frustration in me because they didn't land. They should have sprouted. They should have grown, but they didn't because I wasn't right. But he didn't tell me. He let me figure that out over time that I wasn't right. So we started to run the business together and brought Jenny to speed. And she didn't work day to day in the operations of the business. She worked outside of the home and at a different place at the time. But I did my best to bring her into all the decisions that we made. And all the employees and their status, how they're doing. And, I mean, do you feel like you caught up to speed pretty quickly at the time?
Yeah, I do. I was very interested in, I'm a very curious person. I wanted to know all the ins and the outs of the things I didn't see day to day. So I remember before kids, especially when there was no distraction at the dinner table, just, like, tell me about your day. I wanted to know all of the details. I wanted to be a partner, and so, yeah, I feel like I got as much information as I could and understood as much as I could without being there day to day, on the ground. So.
Yeah. And Jenny would really help me check my spirit in my decisions, like the motive behind decisions. And she was that layer of conscience that I didn't have developed enough in me. And I've appreciated then, and I still do so much, of having that associate, that common bond, we're after the same thing, but there's certain things that I don't see, even though I'm the one making decisions out there. I just don't see. And so it's easy for me to want to bring her into the current status of issues or successes in our company to keep me tempered. It really does keep me centered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This one's looking at me and laughing at me because we have, in all the things that we do, we have a similar dynamic.
Yeah.
That, I tend to be the let's go take over the world and do all the things that we can. Let's grow aggressively. What does it look like to build a team? What does the marketing side look like? Like, what does the full aspect of building a business and kind of having a vision for, in 5 years we could be here, in 10 years we could be here, and that kind of thing. And for us, like, one of the things that Sarah is very good at is she sees details that I don't see. I'm really good at the, like, this is the macro level of what's going to happen, right? Both from a natural skill and then just from kind of a prophetic foresight standpoint. I'm good at going, this is where we're going to be in 6 months. This is what's going to happen. This is what it's going to feel like in the texture of life and what it's going to be like. Like, that's kind of what works for me. But then I have blind spots.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at things this way and all the things that could be done. And when I'm in that state, I don't know if you're like this, Michael. Sometimes I don't always want to. I won't say didn't. It's still to this day sometimes, like, I don't always want to hear the yes, but have you considered? Have you thought about this detail? Oh, you want to add vacant staging to part of our business. Have you thought about all the effort that goes into staging a vacant house and all, those kind of things?
Yeah.
And so part of our journey has been transitioning. I would say when we started, it was tension. It was,
right.
I'm pulling for, let's do more, faster, bigger, stronger. And so she feels like she has to be the anchor.
Like holding the reins or something.
Yeah, pulling in the reins, because if I don't hold the reins,
he's just going to go.
What this guy's going to do, right? And what we've migrated to is a much greater understanding of
partnership.
Exactly. Of partnership is like, it is still true. I am still looking farther, further, broader. But now when she talks, I don't hear it as a she's trying to hold me back. I hear it much more as a, I've got a piece to play because of who God created me to be. She has a piece to play because of who God created her to be.
Right.
And so now it feels more like she is supporting versus she is holding back.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right? If she's got something and I bring the kind of but we could also do these things, it feels much more like we are partnering towards the outcomes, because over 21 years of marriage? No, that's not right. That's way off. It's 23. Wow, I just lost a couple
23.
23 years of marriage, we have come to an understanding of who we are and like how we support one another because of that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And it is. And it's usually in those like small conversations, like sitting around the dinner table or at the end of the day, and something will come up, or he'll call me in and be like, hey, I'm seeing this. What do you think? And it's not, I think what I like about it is it's just in the everyday. It's in our conversations, and it's in the life that we've continued to build together that like allows for that trust of one another and that partnership to continue to grow and develop.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah. Two are better than one, right? We are
Two are definitely better than one.
opponents of marriage. And we, whenever we've got friends who are getting close to engagement, we're so encouraging. It's like, listen,
Do
God,
it.
I'm here to tell you that it is better. It will get better than where you are right now. Yeah.
Definitely way better.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true. All right, so you guys obviously came together, got married, learned how to productively make decisions on the business. Your dad exited in, I think you said 2012, is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
So then you have been running the business. You've been managing it before, but you've really been running it as yours for the last 12 years, or almost 12 years at this point in time.
Yeah, that's right. And in that time, in 2018, that was another real pivotal time in my life as a man, but as a business owner as well. And the network of churches that we're connected to, they've got a sector of them and they offer a school of business development. It's with the corporate side of them, and that school was offered, and I knew it was going to be a pretty intense school. It was like a 7 or 8, 9 month long school, but the premise of the school was learning how to run business from a kingdom perspective.
Right.
And I thought that word was interesting because in my mind still I was a Christian owned, not really understanding completely what that meant, other than that had to be what I am because I'm a Christian and I own a business, and I do try my best to put the values of God, that are in my heart, not every day. But I didn't realize that there's a distinct difference in a business that operates by the kingdom principles only. And so I enrolled in this path where God really started to do the renovations on my heart. And for the first time, I saw the error of a lot of thinking systems that I had. For example, this whole thing where employees were a necessary evil or a tool just to get me to where I needed to be business wise.
Yeah.
But that realization, what I had done with an asset that God gave me to use, and how I classified them, and how I didn't outwardly demean them, because I'm a pretty positive person, and I'm not I'm a very driven person, but I learned to be not such a driver of people, the hard way. But when I realized that I still wish that I didn't have people in my life to have to manage, because I just like the construction work. I just wish it was like a robot. I would choose that. Through that school that I went through, God just started to chip away at these thinking systems that I had. And even this, the stress of being in this business for that long at that point, and the stress of just work, the stress of business weighed heavy on me, to where I started to, even in the back of my mind, wonder, did I make the wrong choice that day I smelled that plywood in the back of that?
Wow.
All I could smell was cow manure around me, like, for years. I loved it, and it was great. And that day, that odor of that plywood, did I make the wrong call? Am I really set up to handle this kind of stuff? Did I do the wrong thing? And so that it wasn't that I had a back door open, but I was wondering if I should open the back door and just consider, like, should I do something else?
Do I need another option?
Am I better fit for something else? It went from that highly ambitious, arrogant, prideful, I can do this better than anybody else, to I really don't know what I'm doing, and I'm having a hard time handling the stress. And these responsibilities are pulling me down. And so, God, what am I supposed to be doing here? And he just really started to dismantle a lot of the strongly held beliefs that I had that were just wrong. They were never from him. They were instilled in me by by my parents, primarily my dad, who did his best, but with the sight that he had, he didn't build in me an identity in Christ alone.
Mm-hmm.
Even that come to considering everything a loss that I might get in Christ, I just never knew how to live that out. Even when it comes to my placement in life at the time. But through that very intense 8-month time of study, of digging into scriptures and digging into the mind of God on why he would have started me in this business in the first place, was the first time that I was able to say, I am here today running this, not because of that decision I made when I smelled that plywood that day. I am here, or because of an opportunity that my dad had given me. I'm here because God placed me here. And that's it. He has been the one who's arranged every decision in my life. My frustration when I got out of high school that sent me 5 years doing something else. That day I opened the door and I got a whiff of this. That's just bizarre. A whiff of this plywood that sent me a direction here. And then my unmet expectations and my frustrations of hearing a word from him when I could finally enact it, and it didn't, all those things, he had placed me in that. And it led to a time of a lot of just repentance in my heart for who I was. And in that time, so in inquiring, okay, God, who am I and what am I supposed to be doing? I know you placed me in this, but what does that mean? Again, it comes around, build the team. The same exact thing at this point of, years later. And it's like, oh no, like not this again. But I was able then, I was developed enough to slow down and say, what does, and what I understood it to mean was build into the people in my team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with a business success. It has everything to do with doing things right, doing it right in people, doing the right processes, handling my clients right. And in from the outside looking in, it's like, well, that's not your business. Your business is to build more stuff and to sell projects for less than it takes to build them.
Yeah.
So predict that well and manage projects well. That's how you be successful. And God was turning that around. And he's like, no, build my kingdom into every aspect of your operations. And that put me on I just take my hands off of everything. I was afraid of my self-ambition at that point because I knew that I didn't know how to do that. All I knew is how to have a desire and go for it. So it took me into a period of time in my life where I was afraid to even have any vision, to be honest. I was afraid it was full of just carnal ambition. Yeah. And I didn't want to go down that road again. I was convinced at that point that God put me here and he wanted something from this construction business here. And it really had nothing to do with the projects that are coming out of the ground. Although they're coming out of the ground all day long, multiple sites, things are going and decisions are being made and meetings are held and products are ordered. And so all that's happening in real time. And he's just tearing apart my ability to even know what I was doing. And so it was a bit of unrest in me during that time. And it took a while for me to get my sea legs underneath me.
Yeah.
I had confidence that, you know what, I can trust him if I focus on building into the people and processes in my business to make sure they're all good. Like if somebody were to come in and interview us as a company and spend a week with us deep inside the office, deep inside our file cabinets, inside of our server, inside of the conversations with my employees, would that be pristine at every level? God even brought me back to the whole interaction between, it was the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, right? When she came, she had heard about this guy's, how wonderful he is and how broad he was. And when she came to inspect that, she said, I just had heard about the half of you. And I realized that I need to change the focus of really what I'm here to do in the first place. Yes, we do build things and we take dirt level and we start shooting things towards the sky. But that's not really what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to focus on building the people, building the processes. And if I do that, he will handle the liability of construction, the safety of our workers, the interactions. He will handle all that stuff. And so it's from 2018 until even now, it's been that focus of narrowing down on exactly what am I supposed to do. And it's not what meets the eye on the outside, but I'm convinced that that's what he has for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many thoughts based on that, all of those pieces. I think, if we think about the Word of God and how it describes God, he clearly primarily cares about people.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's for God so loved the world. He sent his son, right? It is God cares about seeing people come to life. And therefore he's looking for people who, when it says, take up your cross, meaning the definition that I have for you, the cross that I have for David or Sarah, or Michael or Jenny, take up that cross and follow me. And then the rest of that is because whoever loses his life will find it, right? Or whoever tries to keep his life for himself, who tries to go and do what they want to do, will lose it at the end of the day. But whoever takes up that cross, that definition, and says, that's what I take on. I choose to lose myself and take his definition. That's who finds their life. And so that value matters so much. Like it reminds me, I have similar journey in terms of, I think it was, I'm going to call it 2016. I'm not sure. So I got a prophetic word from someone who's part of our network, and he said, look, you've got too much ambition, and you're like striving to try and make something of yourself. And what you need to do is you need to be happy being a farmer, meaning you show up, you do the work, you go home. You show up, you do the work, you go home, and you're not trying to make an outcome out of the work that you put in.
Yeah.
Be happy to work. Farmers work hard. Nobody doubts that. It's not that there's not a level of effort, but it was you've got to stop striving for some ambitious, outsized outcome. And what's interesting is that in that was the follow-up was, and when you do this, meaning when you allow God to dismantle the sense of ambition and the sense of I need to do this to accomplish, to become something, when you allow God to dismantle that, then you will have wisdom. And then I will elevate you in a way that, the systems that I put you in will say, I'll look at the wisdom that this guy has. But that wisdom won't come until you die in terms of to your own self. And so like from what's been real interesting is really like I'm just walking into the backside of that over say the last 6 months.
Yeah.
But now what's happened for me in terms of a career where, as far as my day-to-day job, so not the real estate side of what we do, but the day-to-day job, is there has been a significant amount of elevation in the recent past. But one, I can see the clear hand of God as far as how I got here. And it was by following his voice, specific conversations that he said to have, wisdom that he provided, and now I'm in this situation. Not because I put my hand to it and not by my force of will I made it happen. That's not how I ended up here. And the second thing is just a really clear sense that he put me here.
Right.
And that he put me here, like on one hand, it helps me not get prideful, but that's less of the issue right now. It's more the other side. It gives me confidence that if he put me here, then even though I don't know, like it is a situation where I'm being asked to do things that are broader than what I've done in the past, there's a sense of like, but if he put me here, then there has to be a way to go forward. There has to be a path forward to accomplish everything that he wants accomplished, because otherwise he wouldn't have put me in this position. And so it actually increases my faith and my hope. But that faith and hope is not buried in selfish ambition. It's faith and hope in the ability to accomplish everything that he wants, and the reality that God needs leaders. He needs people who have gone through a process to allow ambition to be stripped off, but who also have the capacity to go and lead things, to go and drive things, because that's how he has people who can create environments for other people to come in and be safe inside of that sanctuary. When your company begins to be a sanctuary of people can come in and they're safe and they're built and they receive life inside of that environment because it's built correctly.
Yeah, I know. I think two things for me when when you were talking, Michael, and you just now was just something that a principle that comes out of that kingdom business training is purpose over profit, right? And that at the end of the day, like you said, God didn't want another construction company. He wanted to build a purpose and a plan inside of Michael and Jenny and inside of your employees and inside of the people that you will affect. And so just that, I know that's one of the drivers for us, is that inside of any deal or anything that we're looking at or what we're trying to build is what is God's purpose in it first. And if it makes a profit, great. But at the end of the day, we want to walk inside of what his purpose and design is. And the other thing I thought of inside of our world is the image of the canopy, where you've got God taking care of these massive operations and these things moving and shifting things in the earth. And I kind of take that to the micro scale of our lives, because truth is scalable, is that God will watch over and direct and guide and sovereignly design our businesses in a way that they grow and they prosper. And our job is to stay watered. Our job is to build our lives, to build our families, to interact and build teams inside of our businesses and move by his directives. And so I just got those, just as we were talking, those two things just came to mind as far as what God's kind of doing inside of our lives, and I think inside of your lives as you've been growing and talking about your journey as well. So
yeah, very similar processes. Yeah, and that's just the hand of God. He just takes people through a journey to get them to where he needs them to be.
yes.
So as I look back on my past that I joke about, I despise, I would never want to go to my 20s again. Those were not the best years of my life. But at the same time, who might have despised that? Because I had to. I had to go through that prideful, arrogant, dead-end road me, and to realize that this is never what he asked of me. And I never asked him what he did ask of me. And so, and you're exactly right by that things, even that principle of purpose before profit, like that just completely turned me upside down. It's like, well, what about all the times that my dad said, if it's going to be, it's up to you, Michael?
Right.
Meaning, like, there's opportunity before you. If you give your heart, if you're diligent, if you're a hard worker, more than anybody else, you're going to be successful. But on the flip side of that is, oh, nuts, I'm responsible for all this, and it's up to me. And that strain and that pressure that just puts up. And it ends up in gray hair and wrinkles is what it does. But to be completely restricted in that, I was like, in order for me to make sure that God is the beneficiary of everything that I do, I've got to put his purpose first. And that means I've got to trust him for the profit. But something that we were taught in that program, which has proved true, is the profit will come. You just don't worry about that. Don't focus on it. And David, exactly what you said, for the first time in my life, and it was through the avenue of this business, the scriptures that say that in order for a man to find his life, he has to lose it, are finally making sense. They're coming for the words of that book into my heart, and I'm starting to realize that the slower I go and the more I take my hands off, the more God can shift us, and it feels like home when I do that. The more I put my hands on it and unleash the ambition inside of me, you get this initial surge of energy, and then the stress starts to load. And you think of like, okay, how do I track the grace of God in my life? And that's one thing that I can tell is when I start to do that, because you can pick up your cross again and go follow another Jesus anytime you want. When that happens, that grace just leaves, and I'm starting to get discernment a little bit more of, oh, stop. Okay, stop. I'm feeling things that I should not be feeling right now. And how do I get myself in the back order again?
Yeah. It's so good. And I love that because it's like when you're young and ambitious, you read those things, and it's the way it sounds, the way it comes across is like, oh, you're going to give up what you want and live, a life as a monk, or, like a life of lack, if you will. And it's like, that is not right.
Right.
Like when he says, I've come that you have life and life more abundantly, it's because turns out he knows the best version of me.
Yeah.
Turns out that if I follow him, the life and the adventure, like even in the midst of some of the current, like the challenges and of the current life, where at least for us, right, there's a lot of things going on. There's my job expanding at work. There's trying to bring her kind of staging and design business up while doing accounting, while 4 kids and all, like it's a bunch of things, right?
All of life.
And when I go, like when I go and I pray about it, it's like my sense is God's like, look, you want a life of adventure. This is who I created you to be, is a life that's got a lot going on. So lean into the definition that I've given for you, but have faith and hope in that.
Yeah.
Not fear, not stress, not trepidation, but know that there's a long track record in God here. And therefore, you can have faith and confidence that in the midst of a lot of things going on and a lot of work going on, that's all true, that there's life found in it because it's my definition.
Yeah.
It's my definition for you. And in that is where there's life.
And I've really found, at least for me, that's just something that I've got to die daily in. Because if I don't continue to die into his purposes and deny myself, it's just, you go feral pretty quick. Like,
it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to go, oh, I'm doing it on my own strength.
Yeah, exactly. But that's really where I can, again, take those scriptures and really apply them to my life. Is I have to die to ambition daily. I have to just lock myself up. And I'm not going to let that thing out, because it's going to take me down a road that there is no grace, there is no comfort,
Right.
I'm immediately, my trajectory moves outside the will of God. You talked about that canopy, Sarah, earlier. That's the moment I move to get outside of under his covering. And when I do, it's like the cares and the weight of the world and the stresses of things start to just be so much more. And and so that's just a place that I'm learning just every day, just to slow myself down.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was really good as far as just the heart and development that goes behind getting to where you guys are at today. So where are you at today? Tell us a little bit about, like, what is the scope and scale of Timberline today, and I'm also just really curious about what does it look like on the practical side. If I as a client come and engage, what does it look like for me to come and engage with Timberline if I'm like, I want a custom home built, or what does that look like?
Well, I think we've been able to develop a really good process that works well for us, and it really provides a great experience for the client. And that's really what we want. So many people come into us as initial contact, first time conversation with them, and you get this fear and this inhibition to be honest, because they're so afraid of being taken advantage of, because they had been in a construction project taken advantage of, but their sister-in-law were, or somebody was. They watched 60 Minutes on TV or whatever it was, but they're so self-protective. And so we've really worked hard to develop a process that allows us to coach people through something that is scary, because you're dealing with big numbers and you're dealing with expectations of a certain quality of life I might have in this schedules. And you like, I'm taking my whole nest egg that I've worked my whole life for, and I'm putting it into this residence, this house. And so what we do is, when we first take a client inquiry, a phone call or on our website or whatever that might be, we first of all have got to the point where we discern it, like, is this something that we want to pursue or not? Based on just the initial data, what their names are, what they're looking at doing, and where they're looking at doing. Does it fit in our business model? In the old days, back in those years that I would try to get bigger and bigger, it's like, I'll take anything. This is, it's 3 hours away. Sure, we'll throw a bit at it. But no. And so lately we've realized that, you know what, God has got a fence for us to stay in. Let's just make sure that we just take projects within that fence. And typically clients will come to us with an idea, and sometimes they've got a piece of land to build on. Sometimes they don't, but they come with us with a concept. I got this picture from this magazine. I got this Pinterest page full of stuff. Where do I go from here? What's the process like? And the question that you asked is exactly what we get a lot of the times. And we like it there. We like to start at the beginning versus having somebody come in with an experience that didn't work well.
Mhm.
We're trying to do some damage control in that, build trust, because that's the biggest thing from day one. If we can't build a repertoire of trust with our clients, we're honestly not interested in moving forward. I'm not going to fight those battles of self-protection just because they can be so difficult. And we enter into these contracts that are a year long. Since COVID, it's even been longer than that when
Wow.
staffing is shorter and it's not as easy to get products that we use. So if we're going to enter a year relationship, I mean, it's like a marriage where you're communicating every day on some pretty tense things sometimes. And there's some potholes in the road that we want to make sure that we can navigate those things well together. So that level of trust that I can feel with the client, that I feel that they have with us, and the ease of communication are two of the biggest things that we look for on, do we even want to go to the next step in this?
Right.
If we do, we just do some qualifying with them to see, okay, the nature of what you want to build, does it, first of all, it's got to be designed. And we don't do in-house design any longer. We outsource that to a couple firms here in town. But does it need to go to the architect route, or does it just warrant going to a draftsman? Completely different processes, completely different price points, but different results as well. It's not like they're apples to apples. And so it just depends on the needs of the client on which way I steer them. And so we get them set up with the designer.
Can we go a little deeper there? Like, that's super interesting to me. So what, like, what's the difference as far as something that you're like, oh, that's just a draftsman versus this needs an architect? Like, is it? I don't even know. I don't even know what are the things that start to have you direct them one way or the other.
Well, honestly, it's just let's start with two things. First of all, budgets, because that's a strong component of this. And so that will help steer me in a direction. But more importantly than that, it's just the level of the finish level that I feel they're expecting. They'd be happy with a project that looks similar maybe to what my neighbor has or what my friends have, or use similar building components? Or are these people who really want the wow in their build? I mean, they don't know what they want, but what we do know is that we've saved a long time for this, or we've been planning this a long time, or sadly to say is, I really want to impress everybody who drives by. And that's seldom spoken, but it is often the
Right.
truth.
It's real.
Yeah. So when I kind of get a feel for, do they want to just to create a structure to live in, or do they want to create an atmosphere inside? That's something of me that uses tile from Italy, that we shipped in, or special, conditions. I'll steer them towards an architect, because what an architect will do, it'll look like on the outside you'll have a roll of blueprints or plans. They look dissimilar, but the architect has a whole completely different approach. I mean, they look at the way the sun at different times of the year comes in windows, and do we want solar gain in the wintertime? So we have to put an overhang that's so long, because as the sun sets down low, it's going to come in, won't in the summertime. And they look at textures and the emotions and the mood different textures create. And the architect design projects often have interior designers that go with them. And that's a whole nother level of mood and atmosphere and feeling and sense. And it's just completely different level than just, I'm looking for a good safe space, raise my family in, something that's going to have some features that I didn't have in my last house I'd want now. But on a typical residence that we build, if they go the draftsman route to get the plans designed, we're talking $4,000 to $5,000. The architect route, depending on if we need structural engineering, but that could be anywhere from $40,000 to $100,000
Just to get the roll.
Paper.
Yeah.
Paper with stamps on it. Stamps are very important, people. It's a lot of intellectual property that you buy with that, but there's nothing on the ground. So if you go to quote on that project and it's way over budget, that's money invested to find out what it's really going to cost, is what it is. So I don't steer everybody down that road, but there are certain clients, and we always have residences in construction that are designed by an architect. Always, we have them designed by draftsmen as well, and they're good draftsmen, good designers, but they don't bring that same level that an architecture firm does.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of artistry inside of
There is
the architecture and the design aspect versus just a straight
right. There's
drafting.
function and then there's form, and you add that form element to the functional space to an architect. Yeah.
I was just going to add that a lot of clients come to us from the architect just because there's relationship there. And sometimes it goes that direction as well.
That's true. Yeah.
Nice.
So someone hires the architect firm directly, and so then they show up to you and go, "Here's the role."
Yeah. They're designing it, or they're still in design, and that's where I really like to come in when that design process is underway, instead of when it's done, because my job is to deliver a reality to the owners. What's this going to cost? The designer does not. All he really wants to do is just design what the client wants. But I need to make sure that every step that we take is a step in the direction that we want to go. So to allow a designer and an owner to just collaborate on a project without the construction piece of that, it's like we talk about a three-legged stool, like a three-legged stool in your kitchen. Mm-hmm. One being quality, one being quantity, and one being price. The owner can choose two. The owner and designer can choose two of those legs, only two. Right. And I have to choose the third one. So they can choose the size, the quantity, and the quality, and they have to let me choose the price. Or they can choose the price and the quantity. I have to choose what kind of quality they can get for that.
Yeah.
So it's a very collaborative process, and it's so much easier for us to go in while the design is in the works, so that if their budget is, just for ease of conversation, if their budget is $100,000 and they want an underground pool and they want a safe and they want a heated driveway, it's a time for me as a good team member to say, let's just stop. Let's just stop because if I want to go to Texas from South Dakota, I don't know where your house is on what street, but I know it's that direction. So I'm not going to drive towards Washington.
Right.
I'm just not. Or I'm not going to drive to North Dakota first. Even though I don't know exactly where you live, I'm not going to go in a direction that I know is not taking me in the way that I want to get to.
Yeah.
And so that's our job, is just to be a good team member, is to collaborate in that process of making sure that every step is going to get them our best intent of where they want to be. Now, nobody's got a crystal ball to tell, like in real time, like the design goes. I want to have an app designer do this. Like every conversation, you can see a ticker of a budget. Like, we're talking about like a heated driveway. We're just doing on one of our projects now, a heated driveway, and just see the ticker go. Like it comes out. Oh, let's scrap that and let's just do a gravel driveway and see that back up. And so, but the collaborative process is what we initiate early on, because that is the only way these projects are successful. Is that the client, the designer, and us as the ones who execute the design can all get together and best efforts together to get that design complete.
Right. And at the end of the day, to deliver something to a client who doesn't know they don't know what levers are big levers and small levers, right? Like which pieces are, this is going to move the needle $50,000 versus this is going to move the needle $5,000. Like those are the things that as a homeowner or as a first time, they're just not gonna know that.
Right. Right.
And what I like, and it sounds like, I love the word collaborative, because at least from my experience, having been both run some smaller projects, nothing like full home builds, but also dealing with general contractors on the other side, is you can tell the ones that are primarily focused on the profit outcome, because you can just feel it in the conversations, right? What they're trying to do is like they've put in a bid that's at X dollars. And so after that, every decision that's made that adjusts costs may not adjust the final cost. It really just adjusts their profit. And so you can see them being motivated by that. I will tell you, as the consumer of that drives me. I don't respond to that very well. I like to go pray and get some peace before I. But then, we have a rental property in East Dallas right now, and it's an hour drive, so I can't be down there. So we're using a general contractor to help us with that. And it's been a growing process around what does it look like for me to trust him to make certain decisions,
Mm-hmm.
even some that cost me money before he can get a hold of me. And that's been, right. And his response to me was like, you have to trust me to make these decisions. I've got workers on the job right now, and this is more remodel of a 1960s home, so you never know
what you're going to find,
what's going to happen, right, with these things. And he's like, you've got to trust me that I'm trying to do the right thing, from a cost standpoint, but I have to keep the workers moving, and I have to make the right, decisions. And so it's forced me to become better at figuring out what opinions do I need to communicate early. Because like for me and this guy, we have a slight delta on, I love like high performance construction, right? Like for me, if we're going to go do a shower, like let's do a full Schluter, fully waterproof system. Like that's what I want to do. And, his tile guy's like, well, we don't even tape the seams between our hardy backer, and we're pretty sure that the grout and the tile creates a water barrier. I'm like, well, that's a pretty big gap, right? And so we had to negotiate our way towards I at least need you to put this kind of a liquid barrier, like give me something in between that's the right cost balance. But it's been for me, it's been a good experience of how do I work with someone to go, hey, let's have a partnership here. I do have some opinions about things that other people don't care at all about. But you've got your experience, and how do I navigate that way forward so that at the end of the day we have a good partnership?
Yeah.
Because that's really what I want back to the people is I'm like, I could see, this individual like, hey, we may decide to go flip some houses. I need someone I can trust to be on the ground, because we are not anywhere close to me doing this thing for the full time, right? We're nowhere close to that. And so I need people I can trust. So that partnership dynamic from a general contractor feels like everything to me.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we're glad to be that. I mean, that's our job, for us to coach a client through this whole process and to make decisions in their best interest. That's our job. That's what we're supposed to. And even in the way we develop our construction schedules. So once a project gets designed, we agree on the design, we cost it, and we break down when we deliver our costs, it's in very detailed, down to the model number of the faucets, how many outlets are in the room, the brand of shingles on the roof, the R value of the insulations, the percent efficiency on the furnace, the SEER, the air conditioner, all of these way too much detail. But I want them to know what they're buying.
I feel like is that common for, it's whatever you just described is not common for remodelers from a construction standpoint.
It's not common for new construction either.
Okay.
But for me, what it does is it assures that I've met the expectation. It takes me a long time to draft these documents up. Not a long time to bid it, but nothing is done for us haphazardly or in a hurry. I take days to detail everything out so that they can read it and make sure that, yes, you've got my expectations out. I want to get it out now, versus 3/4 of the way through the project and they say, I didn't think it was going to turn out that way. Or I didn't know you were going to use that brand of windows. It's like, well, that's what I priced early on. Can't I just go the extra mile and detail that all for you? Yes, it takes time. And if the project doesn't go through, it's time that you don't get paid back for. Right. So when we submit a bid, I have got probably, our houses are very detailed, a lot of extensive finishes. But of my time as a primary estimator on these, I've probably got 100 hours into
per project.
Per project. If it goes to, we can't do it, that money is just, that time is gone. And I don't need the experience. So I want to make sure that I pre-qualify them as best I can.
It doesn't happen a lot.
It doesn't happen. Yeah, it doesn't happen a lot. Yeah. Oftentimes projects will go to a rebid, value engineering, figuring out how to do things a little bit differently. But I just try to make it as detailed as possible because I can get the expectations out. They know what they're getting. And then I just convert all my documents into my project management documents. So all those details go to our superintendents in the field. So they know when the insulator shows up, okay, what did we agree to?
Yeah.
What does the client expect? Because everything that I sold is in here. And so even the windows, when the guys are putting the windows in, they know the config, like the config. Is it a double hung window? Is it a casement window? Is it a fixed glass? It's all in there per window, so they can go and they can be the first line of defense. Oh, they shipped us the wrong thing. So all my bid documents are easily convertible into project management documents once a project goes to construction. But part of that is as well, once it goes to construction, is we develop construction calendars and schedules, which I hate. They're the most waste of time thing because they're obsolete by the time you publish them. I mean, because it's just frustrating. It's one of those things that it's never gets completed. It's always being worked on, like always. And you've got to have the right people in the office who don't mind repetitive work. Like I like more of like one and done, like do it right the first time. And then it's going to, like when you compact earth to pour concrete on, let's compact it right. So the concrete works and nothing, it doesn't settle and it doesn't break. Let's not rework. Well, the schedule is reworked to the max. That's all it is. Rework. But what I like to do on that is it's my job to prep them for key times that I need the client here. Because a lot of our clients don't live here. They live remotely and they're building second homes here, vacation homes or whatever that may be. Well, I need to know like when we stake it out on the ground, I need you here that day. And then X number of days later on this date, I need you here for an electrical walkthrough because we're going to start our electrical work and we don't want to put outlets where you don't want them and switches where you don't. Those decisions it's too early in the bidding process to identify where those are at. But I need you here. And so part of the schedule is getting these milestone dates that I've got to have. And again, that's just being a good partner. It's not being a good partner to say, tomorrow I need the paint colors. The paint is showing up, and like, what do you want me to do? And they're like, well, what about the flooring color? What about the cabinet color? And I can't do this by tomorrow. And that is what gets people to talk to their friends about the construction process not being fun. So it's on the job is to just really collaborate, be a good coach along the way, to know that this year process is full of potential potholes and hurdles. But I've been through this a lot. You guys haven't. I've done this a lot. And let me show you the way through this so that at the end of this, we can shake hands and say, wow, look what we've been able to do together.
Right.
And that's the goal that drives every decision that we make. Is getting to that.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds amazing. I would hire you. I would love all the details.
Yes.
I would read them. That sounds incredible. So let's take one more turn here. If you guys are good for just a little bit longer. I know we've gone a while.
A bit.
But but if we could just go a few more minutes, what does family life look like? You're running this business, you've got it, you're growing. Like how does family mix into also running a successful construction business?
Yeah, I can jump in. Raising 4 boys that are still fairly young. I mean, it's definitely involves a lot of communication. I guess I would say that one key thing just practically is having a calendar that we share so that we can both see as changes are made throughout the day, kind of what's going on. And more recently, as our kids are growing older and more curious and just more aware, I feel like we're needing to get better communicating, not only with each other, but with them, just sharing kind of what's coming up. And so, whether it's meetings that happen in the evening or this day is going to look a little bit different than what you would normally expect, just that we're letting them know so that they feel like they're not blindsided by something, and also just communicating with them that, I mean, life is busy, right? And we have other involvements outside of work, which is, work alone, fills up a lot of time, but just wanting to make sure that our priorities are aligned correctly and that our kids feel like they get our have our attention and that we're a go-to for them. We want to be available to them when they've got something they want to talk through. And so, I don't know. I mean, something that feels pretty important and something we're able to do right now is just having most meals together, in the evening. And I feel like a lot of valuable discussions happen around the dinner table. I mean, I know you hear that growing up, that can be a valuable time, and it isn't always like that. And I know that as kids get older and there's sports and there's different things, it changes, it can change. So right now I feel like we're in a sweet season that we're not banking on will always look like this, but for now it's really just a sweet time to have the conversations around the table and to hear about our kids' days. We often talk about the best part and the hard part, which is something maybe at school, too. And then we even share best part, hard part for us. And so they get to hear processes we're going through. And just a lot of opportunity for building the way that our kids are thinking and working through, making mistakes the way maybe a morning go, as well as often mornings don't go ideally. And there's, responses that are wrong, and the need for repentance and kind of coming close together and talking things through. And so, whether it's at the table or whether it's, to and from school or, whenever, but just conversation and communication in our family, I would say it was a foundation of our, relationship and building a friendship and a marriage, and has just continued to be a strong element, in building our family. So,
yeah, we talk a lot. We bring the kids into business decisions that are appropriate for their age and involvement. And we just don't want them to think that mom and dad have got this mysterious side of them that we don't really know much about. And they're young. But even, for example, last year, we needed a new dump truck to add to our fleet. And this is a big decision for us. I mean, it's $100,000 of investment on a piece of equipment. We wanted the right unit set up the right way. And so we brought them into the process of praying for this dump truck. And it's like, they know dump trucks well. There's a dozen of them. I can see it right now in our house. But to bring them into God, we need it. This is part of our business that we need. And the day that they got a ride in the truck that they had prayed for a year, probably for the right one.
At least, yeah.
And it's the same thing with employees. I mean, that's something often we bring them into. Guys, we really need to get this kind of a person, and we're hoping that God brings the right one. To bring them into those kind of decisions too, and have them carry the weight of that along with us, because we don't want to have segmented life.
Right. Yep.
Mom and dad, they go do their thing and they come home and they jump on us because they're stressed out. And we want them to we want to bring them into just the way all of our life is.
Yeah. I mean, we're similar with our setup. Like, we have a shared calendar, and if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. Like, we've got too many, and, back and forth, we're always pinging different, appointments or dates or things that are set up, and that definitely helps. And like with bringing the kids along, I mean, they've toured houses with us when we were looking at new properties, and we've taken them on, I don't know how many trips to Floor and Decor to pick out items, it's their not favorite place to be ever. But
yeah, apparently we scarred them. We took them when it was lunchtime one day to Floor and Decor to go do some, picking out of things. And so they just think of Floor and Decor as the place that I starve. That's where I don't get food.
Where I don't have anything to eat. So it's kind of a running joke now that whenever we see them, we're like, it's your favorite store, guys, right there. But it's been fun because they've been a part of the process. But even with our youngest, who's 5, and like his schedule has kind of shifted and stuff at work, where he's had a few more travel things, and she started acting up a little bit more at school, and I realized, oh, he's been gone. Like, they were correlating her changes in behavior correlating to his travel. And we realized, like, one, she's kind of COVID baby. He's worked from home. He's always been around like 24/7. And to have this kind of disruption for her was a big deal. And so we've kind of collaborated with her teacher and talking just that, if he's got other trips upcoming, to we communicate with her and help her to stay engaged and involved a little bit more, so that way she understands why there's these changes. And so I think it's important that our kids are up, like you said, it's not like segmented, like it's our whole life all together. For us, for you guys too, the 6 of you all are making this journey of migration as a family. And so recognizing the shifts in seasons and being able to communicate that, I think it's really key, so that there's no isolation, or there's no, segmentation where people don't know what's happening and what's going on. But
Yeah, and it's like if you don't do the deliberate thing in terms of bringing them along for the process, that they don't get the developmental advantage of that. Like you're like with the dump truck. Like if you just showed up with a dump truck, they'd be like, "Great, it's a dump truck. That's awesome."
yeah,
But if they didn't see, oh no, there was a process here, and we inquired of God, and then we listened to God, and then God provided. Because it feels like to me like that's one of the most important aspects you want to make sure your kids walk out of your house with is, we have a God who loves us and provides for us.
Right.
And if you position yourself towards him, then then there is a process and an outcome for your life that brings you faith and hope and love, and all of these things are the outworkings of that. But if they never see the process, if they never see you go through the challenge, if they never see, we had some financial challenges earlier this year, and really felt like we were supposed to like tell the kids, age appropriate, not doom and gloom, not the right, but it was, hey, we're going to have to hunker down a little bit. We're going to have to eat out less. We're going to have to make some choices, but we're trusting God.
yeah,
And we really felt like that was important. So that way, as things shift away from that, we can say, now look, we heard God, we did our part, and he is taking care of us. And now look at the outcomes. And it's like being very, very deliberate about giving our kids a window into those processes, so that way they get the benefit of that. And it actually goes into their development and psyche as, oh, this is what life actually looks like. It's not what you said earlier, which is everything hinges on Michael's ability to execute. Like that is not the mentality that we want our kids developed with. We want it to be one of faith. And that's something that as humans, we have to like God has to repetitively walk us through that.
yeah,
And so I want to give my kids as many reps as possible while they're here.
yeah,
Sure.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
all right. Well, Michael and Jenny, this was an excellent conversation.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing your life, sharing your journey through getting to where you're at today, and all of the amazing development that's gone into getting you guys where you're at. We really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. And so thank you so much.
Yeah. Great to connect with you guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's good.
And cut.
And scene.
We're giving some editing work to do, but I guess you said you weren't
Way
worried
too
about
long.
that. So.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you know, it is.
That's okay.
It is what it's fine. Yeah, you know, I've actually done, you know, basically from a current way people consume media, it's on the extremes. It's either I need shorts that are 30 seconds or less, or
Right.
I'm looking to consume hour plus podcasts. Like those are the like
Extreme.
those. So too long is actually not a problem. Like
Right.
Rogan does 3 hours, right? Like I've never listened to a full 3 hour podcast, but apparently that's the thing. So I'm not worried about the length.
No.
I think it was just great. I
Yeah.
think it was really good. So
It was sure fun to chat with you guys about it. It's fun
Yeah.
to have a platform to just go back and recount the journey a little bit.
yeah,
See it, man. I saw God there, and He did this there, and even prepping for this today, just to write out a timeline, just to see
Yeah.
He was here. He said this, and that's when this happened.
Yeah.
And this season, really good.
yeah,
Well, and that was it was so clear. Like you could clearly see like the signposts of maturity of God going, of you growing and Him speaking and you growing. You know, just like this timeline, a journey and migration to maturity to where you're at now. So it was really great.
I'm going to hit stop. I like that. Hey, so I'm gonna ask you a question. This is we'll call this a cut point. Are they a little quiet in your ear?
A little bit, but
Okay, I'm wondering like how far away are you guys from your mic?
We're
'Cause we can adjust it up some. I just want to make sure we're getting a great capture, and it's a little quiet in my ear.
Sure, we're pretty close. We're as close as we can be right now.
Okay.
I want to change our mic
well,
setting
even you just moved it a little bit. It
Yep.
sounds better now, but
a little better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, and I can speak up a little bit too.
Yeah, I don't want
Okay.
I don't want you to have to overly think about it. I just want to make sure we're getting a good capture.
Cool.
Yeah. I
Jenny,
don't know if can
Jenny was offended. She's out.
She's
like,
gone.
I'm done with this conversation.
She's left.
being kind of bossy. No, Nick came up here and he was sitting right at her side this whole time. So I
Oh,
did him
sweet.
No, that's great.
Well, and I don't know, over here we've got someone's doing lawn work and we've just got buzzing and lawnmowers and weed eaters and everything happening. So I'm like, oh,
I
hope
don't
that's
think
not.
that's going to come through. It should-
You don't
Hopefully
hear
not.
that.
Okay. Good.
Your mic's amazing. I know I said that last time, but I love it. Love hearing it.
Good.
Here she comes.
All right.
She's over the fence.
She's gotten over it.
You got over it?
We'll try to be that bossy again. We'll work on it. We'll work on our behavior. It's tough, but we'll try.
Well, I couldn't even tell he was there, so
Yeah, that was
stealthy little mouse.
Quiet.
so okay. So
We'll cut back in.
yeah.